gentlemen, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where and when you are watching this. My name is Keelin McNamara, and I am incredibly privileged, and I'm more importantly incredibly humbled to be joined by a very special guest this morning in our time zone. This man is a champion in 2 weight divisions of 1 championship, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on planet Earth right now, Mr. Reinier De Ridder. Reinier, thank you so much for your time. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing very well. Thanks for the kind words. Shoot, man, tell me whatever you want to know.
Thank you so much. A blank slate's always a great thing to work with. And as I said, we really do appreciate your time. Right. So I sort of want to take it back to the beginning, if that's okay with you, sort of more about your background and how you got into this crazy world that is mixed martial arts. Obviously, growing up in the Netherlands, you can draw from a lot of inspirations in the combat sports world. I mean, there's so many that come to mind. You know, Bas El Guapo Rutten, Alistair Overeem, Roman Dekkers in kickboxing. Did any of these fighters serve as a real inspiration to you growing up? And did any of them sort of signpost the route into mixed martial arts as something that you wanted to do with your life?
To be honest, not really. Nowadays, yeah, I look up to those guys a lot, and I'm very proud to be a Dutchman because of them. I've met Alistair a couple of weeks ago, trained a little together, and a very kind human and great fighter. Haven't met Bas. I live in the city, Breda, of Roman Dekkers. I train with his brother, Nicky. And where was I going with this? So back when I was a kid, I just started judo, and I really enjoyed it. It was a good tool to build my life as a whole, not just in sports, but it's a great thing to do martial arts for your mind, to get something of a schedule going, to learn discipline and everything. And but never really looking up to someone. This is something I've always tried to avoid, and something that is not really in my nature to look up to people. I always just want to do what I want to do.
I think that's great. It's certainly very interesting because we know so many fighters do have one particular figure or two. So that's great to know. Sort of transitioning into that, what you just mentioned, you obviously started in judo whenever you were 5 years old in the Netherlands, and then you massively developed your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. Is there any particular reason, just so our audience can know, is there any reason for developing your game from such a different base? And what I mean by that is a lot of Dutch fighters obviously take the very well-traveled road of kickboxing and Muay Thai and so on. You've obviously opened up a very different path for young Dutch fighters to travel in developing it from the ground up as opposed to the feet down. Was there a reason for that? Was that just your sort of headstrong nature, or was there a particular reasoning behind that for you?
Just what happened. I got into judo and then evolved from there. When I moved here to Breda, I was trying to get it back into judo, but didn't really find a good club. Found jiu-jitsu, got pretty good in that. And from there, I built everything onto it. So I built my kickboxing onto it, and some more of wrestling instead of just judo. So it wasn't really planned at all, but I'm very happy with the base that I have. It's very easy here to come across a lot of great kickboxers. So I really soak up on all the knowledge. I get a lot of great training partners here to work with. So I'm happy to be here in Holland with some of the world's best martial artists, and especially the best kickboxers in the world. And I'll hope to show off some more of the kickboxing whenever I need to. But for now, I'll keep it a secret.
Yeah, I mean, I guess whenever you're as good on the ground as you are, you don't need to use that. So why put yourself in that situation, right?
Exactly, and I always try to represent jiu-jitsu. I always try to show my skills on the ground in the wrestling department. It's the most important thing for me. I'm very proud of what I'm capable of doing there. But if one day there comes a guy who can really stop my takedown, who can really force me to strike, I'll show some of my striking as well.
Well, I mean, I have no doubt I speak for everybody when I say we are looking forward to that, because that will be fantastic to see. So moving on from that, you made your professional mixed martial arts debut in 2013 on the European circuit, and you managed
Yeah.
to get 9 straight victories. Very impressive feat in its own right. How did
Yeah.
those wins, especially those first tastes of championship gold on the European circuit, how did they make you feel, and how did those initial wins shape your evolution as a fighter at the beginning?
I was a totally different person in the first few fights. My first amateur fight, so I had one amateur fight. I stepped in, I saw the guy across from me in the cage, and just was not in control at all. So I just sprinted across the cage, grabbed him, threw him down, choked him out. He tapped out, and I was very happy that he tapped out, because I was going to gas out in 2 minutes more. So it was a very emotional experience, and which led to my first pro fight, which was even worse. Took the guy down again, got mounted, I was ground and pounding like a crazy man. Finally got the triangle with 10 seconds left, and he tapped out. I got him, and I could barely get up, man. I was so dizzy, emotional, just overworked. So I slowly but surely I adjusted that. I got more in control of my emotions, got more in control of my movements, my technique, my thinking game ahead of fights, my mental game. So step by step, I got better and better at that part. But the theme has always been take a guy down, choke a guy out.
That's very impressive. So in your early days, would adrenaline dump have been a real issue for you?
Man, it's every fucking fight, man. Just yeah, man, I had to bear through it. Then this is something I don't really get anymore, but back in the day when you were warming up backstage, that first couple of punches you throw feel like shit. The first time you grab someone feels like shit, and you feel like, man, what am I getting myself into? I was studying at the time. I lived in a nice apartment, making money, got my future ready. What the fuck am I getting myself into, man? With this cage fighting, another mostly scary looking people, tattoos, shaved heads, and not like I was at the time. So it was an interesting experience back in the day. And then after the first 2 or 3, I traveled a lot to Germany to fight there. And every time it's just a big adventure, man. Going there, mostly fighting like local heroes. Coming in, it was always the other guy walking out, entire crowd roaring and applauding him and chanting. And then it's the fucking Dutch undefeated guy coming in. You can hear how do you say this in English? Like a needle drop or a pin drop? Or
you can hear a pin drop, yes.
Pin drop, yeah. I've been to shows with Hell's Angels in the crowd. When I choked the guy out, the Hell's Angels stood up, and I had to get out as fast as I could. So I've been through some very cool, very interesting life experiences with this sport, man.
Good
and then I got the title. I got the title at Hit FC in Switzerland. And after that, I flew to South Africa to fight there for EFC, local promotion. Sort of the same thing again. First time for a really big crowd, like 10,000 people. Choked that guy out as well. And then I got the call from one to see if I was interested to come and fight the Asians.
Man, that is such an adventure. I'm sure it's a much more colorful story than a lot of other fighters, but thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, and still is this way, Keelin. Still the same, basically the same thing. I'm always flown out. It's always the other guy is always the favorite. I'm always the guy who's supposed to lose. Now, finally, I felt like that with Ong twice. Everybody's normally rooting against me, and I'm always in the lion's den, so to speak. But man, it's always a great experience.
Absolutely. Is that underdog status something you really thrive off of because you faced it so often?
Yeah, I don't really care, to be honest. Nowadays, it's more people are expecting me to win, but this never is a thing in my mind. I never let it get to me. I never let what anybody says does not matter to me.
Absolutely. Sort of moving on from that, a very interesting thing I noticed with your first, when I look at your professional career, I split it into two parts. I split it into your first 9 opponents outside of one championship, and then I take it from there. Perhaps that's something you do also. One thing I noticed that was very intriguing to me, especially with modern combat sports, is the combined records of your first 9 opponents is very impressive because it's a very winning one in their favor, 29 and 19. Whenever you were coming up through the ranks, as you've just outlined through Europe and Germany and Switzerland, was that important to you as a young fighter to immediately test yourself against decent opposition? And the reason I ask that is obviously in a lot of modern sports, especially boxing, sort of, record padding is a very common practice, to build up a star as opposed to actually testing them from the outset. So was it important to you to test yourself against the best that you could as opposed to simply building your record up?
Man, we watch UFC Bellator 1 and we think this game is a very scheduled one, but it's definitely not. In the beginning, I was just taking any fight I could, with opponents dropping out 2 weeks in advance, 1 week in advance, a day in advance, new guy coming up. I made a decision. I want to fight, and I'm taking anybody and everybody. So it was nice if the guy had a good record. If he didn't, still fine. So it is what it is. As a young fighter, as an upcoming amateur, or the first few pro fights, just got to take whatever you can get.
Oh, absolutely. Very good point. So moving on from sort of your early days as a professional, obviously to where you are now, in 2018, you obviously made the very big step up to the world stage with one championship. How did that transition feel for you, and how did you cope with that transition to the world stage?
Good question. So how do I cope with the transition to the world stage? Well, to be honest, I just brought the same guys in my team that I've always brought. I keep a close group of guys who support me. They've been to all my fights. They've been to all my parties afterwards. They're more than just my friends, but my brothers. And I've brought them. And at the end of the day, it's just walking into the cage and doing what I do. So yeah, not a lot changed, but the crowds got bigger. The online crowds got bigger, more people watching. But to be honest, I never let it get in my mind. Try to block all that out until I finish the guy. So only the moment I finish the guy, I can really let it all soak in, watch the crowd, see the reactions everybody has, and enjoy. But till that moment, the only thing I focus on is my opponent and doing what I do best.
That's brilliant. Do you find, just sort of quickly off of that, do you find that keeping your same people around you is the most important element for success, maintaining that consistency regardless?
Important. Yes, for me, it truly is. You see a lot of guys from Holland and from like the European scene. They move to America to join like a big gym, and they're just another number. They don't have a real personal relationship with coaches or whatever. They're not as happy there, training week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. So I'm very happy to have made the choice to stick here with my own team, because I enjoy every minute of training. I enjoy the entire travel. I laugh with the guys in the plane. When it was economy class, now that it's business class, it's still the same thing. When we're backstage, back in the day, in like a toilet to warm up, or like a shitty whatever the fuck, or like where we're at now, in stadiums in Singapore. It's the same guys. The atmosphere is the same. We laugh till half an hour before the fight. Then shit gets serious, and we were ready to throw down.
Absolutely. That must be really impressive when you think back on it, from where you were then to where you are now.
Yeah, it's still growing, and we're taking steps. And it's not just the guys who I've worked with always, but I've been training with Gegard Mousasi and his team for the last couple of years, like 3 or 4 years. And they've been a tremendous help as well. They've become my friends and brothers over that time. And they are a huge part of my success as well.
Certainly amazing allies to have. I have no doubt about that. So yeah, after your first few fights in one championship, obviously transitioning to the Singapore-based organization, you managed to achieve an extremely rare feat, one that's very, very popular now within modern combat sports, of being a champ. I apologize if that's copyrighted by Conor McGregor, but we're going to use it anyway. And so you managed to actually achieve this feat of holding 2 titles in 2 divisions simultaneously against the same fighter, a gentleman you mentioned earlier, Aung Lan Sang. What was it? This is sort of a 2-part question, because it's something I find very interesting. What was it like winning 2 titles just on its own? And what was it like doing that against the same fighter twice? Did your preparation change at all because it was the same opponent?
So this was kind of like a last minute thing, right? So the first time I beat him, I've never fought a guy twice except for Ang. First time I beat him, I was over the moon to finally get my hands on the belt, to finally be there and done it. Then I was supposed to defend my belt, but my opponent canceled 2 weeks out. And then a week out, they called me, Ang's opponent has fallen out as well. Are you interested to fight at light heavyweight? So fight a weight class above. So I took a little time, spoke to my wife and the family, and said I'll try and catch a plane. So I was on a plane 5 days out, arrived 4 days out, and then did what I did. But it was, to be honest, it was pretty hard to get my mind right to do it all again, you know? It's not... I really thrive off a challenge. So to be able to look forward to something, put your mind to it, and then execute, something I really enjoy and something I like to do in my life. And I didn't really have too much time to find that goal in this one, and it was a goal that had already been achieved, you know. So yeah, it is what it is. But it's nicer to have some time to prepare properly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sort of just off of that real quick. Obviously, you mentioned the challenges of fighting Aung Lan Sang on 4 or 5 days' notice, especially moving up a division. Did that title win almost feel a little bit sweeter because the challenges were more difficult?
Nah, I want to finish, guys, man. He escaped 5. This is I was a little bummed out after the fight, to be honest.
Man, that is such an impressive mindset after winning a second title. I know what I would do. Yeah, so obviously transitioning, you could very well, depending on how this happens, you could really make history again if this does happen. A heavyweight gentleman by name of Arjun Bullard defeated Brandon Vera for his heavyweight title in one championship. And of course, the first person to call him out was one of the most versatile fighters on the roster in you. I suppose my question in this regard is, how likely is this fight to happen? I mean, I don't doubt how much you do want it, because you've never called out someone you don't want to fight. And more importantly, how would you see that fight going 2 divisions above what you normally fight at?
Yeah, so I'm hoping it's going to happen, at least, Keelin. But I'm not too sure if they're interested. Arjun has already said that he's not really down, and he's been talking about WWE and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if he's down. But it's a clear goal, and I'm looking for a clear goal to be triple champ. The first one. I'm the first ever undefeated double champ. So let me be the first undefeated triple champ. That'd be cool, right? That's something to really look forward to work for. Then secondly, the fight. He is his wrestling is all right. He's got good wrestling. He's been like a Commonwealth medal winner. He's been part of Olympic team there in Canada. So he's a good wrestler. His ground game is like not amazing. Doesn't really do too much to pass. His bottom game is like non-existent. The striking is all right. He's got pretty good boxing. Doesn't really kick too much, but he's got good head movement, pretty fast hands. Combines his boxing with his wrestling pretty well. He's heavier, but he's like a head smaller than me. He's a lot tinier. I think I can keep him at a distance in the striking. This might be a guy to bring out some more of my striking, but I still believe I can take him down. I still believe I can choke him out.
That would be a spectacle. There is no question about that. And I think you actually make a very good point. I think Arjun Bhullar is the latest that we've seen in the smaller, more mobile heavyweight. We've seen that sort of development over the last 10 years or so. I think perhaps Cain Velasquez was the first, and the likes of Arjun Bhullar, perhaps the latest in that line. But thank you very much for giving me your feedback on that. That's very interesting to know. So you've obviously, I mean, you've been in one championship for 3 years and you've already achieved a lot there, more so than many fighters ever achieve in their career. So my next question for you is, obviously any and every great fighter finds themselves at one time or another, for one reason or another, linked to the UFC. So how do you think the UFC's current middleweight / light heavyweight, I'll ask you both because obviously you've competed very well in both. How do you think both of the UFC's divisions compare to One Championship's current roster?
Well, they're deeper, right? So UFC has a lot deeper rosters, and it's still the most prestigious belt out there. The UFC is. I think one can compete on an individual basis. So I think Aung would do very well in the UFC, especially if he fights another striker. The guy is almost impossible to put away. He has a granite chin. He has like a power in his hand and in his leg. It's just uncomparable to anybody. So I think like Aung would do very well in the UFC against the right opponent. And I think Izzy is a great champion. He moves tremendously. His movement is very precise, very concise. Striking is beautiful. He's a lot of different tools in his striking. But he gets taken down by almost everybody nowadays, man. If you've seen the last fight, Izzy versus what's his name?
Marvin Vettori.
Vettori, the Italian guy. Man, that double started on the other side of the cage, man. What he take him down with? Izzy has no takedown defense in the open space. He has his takedown defense against the cage is good, but his takedown defense in the open space is shit, man. He gets taken down very easily. So I think if I would really like a shot one day with him,
Yeah, that's very interesting analysis, and you've pretty much answered my follow-off question if what you would be interested in eventually fighting there. I think it's very clear that you would.
I would.
Even if somehow that didn't happen, I mean, this is more my fan point of view than anything else. If we were ever able to have like an old sort of Pride UFC super fight style, I just think that would be such an amazing fight stylistically because of what you've just outlined.
Yeah, exactly. I would as well. Well, cross promotional things, I don't see this ever happening. UFC is too big, too prestigious for this right now. They would never lend a hand to one to grow off their name. I don't believe this is a thing happening. But who knows? It's a crazy business, and we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, I do think you're right in that regard. So, Reinier, my last question for you is, and I suppose it's more of a contemplative question because it's still a long time away yet. Obviously, you're 30, 31 now, so you're still in the prime of your career. Say 10, 15 years time down the road, once you retire and you exit the arena of mixed martial arts forever, how would you like to be remembered? What is the legacy of Reinier De Ridder?
Man, the only thing I think of is what my kids think of me, man. If they are I hope they're proud when I finish this. I hope they're proud of who I am, how I've raised them, and I hope they're proud of what Daddy has done in his professional career, and that's enough.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective, and it's something that always comes across in your interviews as well. Your legacy is obviously one that you want to be a family-based legacy rather than a celebrity legacy, and I respect you a lot.
Who cares whatever somebody says online or whatever, man. I've been, the last couple of years, I've been bombarded with everybody's opinion on what my fighting style or my wins or my opponents, or I don't care, man. I'm here. I'm just having a good time. I'm looking for some experiences in my life to grow off, and I'm looking for some to achieve stuff to make the people around me proud, happy. I'm looking to put some money in my pocket to take good care of the people around me, and that's all that's important.
Of course, and I respect that massively. I really do. You seem, well, obviously not seem, you are, of course, a very grounded champion. And I do think people respect you a lot for that. I think that comes across very clearly.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot.
Not at all. You are very, very welcome. And at that point, those are all the questions that I have. I'm sure I've taken up enough of your time already anyway.
No, perfect, man. I just had lunch. I'm picking up the kids now, and then I'll be in the gym later.
That's fantastic. And that is where I will leave it. Thank you, everybody, very, very much for listening. This has been an absolute pleasure of an interview to conduct. And Reinier, thank you very much for your time once again, my friend.
Thanks a lot, man. Give me a call whenever you need me, yeah?
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.